joke, Njue is a very inconvincible person.
Okay, Kamene, today have it your way. I am not going to even correct you. I can't.
I mean, wait. Do you guys still get some beating from your parents? As big as some of you are?
You just know I will leave my mother's house when I am 33 years.
That is the way to go, Kamene. Adulting is not the way we thought. See everything the way we thought. See that easy.
Angalia jiba yako.
Tukate maji.
Industrious, humble, astute are hardly suitable words to describe the glowing tributes following our departed hero, the third President of the Republic of Kenya, Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. We continue to eulogize the former president right here on KBC Channel 1, and now it's time for the news. My name is Njue, and Lensa Odingo will be assisting us with the sign language interpretation. And as I had said earlier, we continue to eulogize the late former president, and this is the last day to view the body and pay your last respects in Parliament before his mass on Friday and his final journey in Othaya on Saturday. Good afternoon. Let's first of all cross over to Parliament building, where Kenyans from all walks of life continue to eulogize, have a chance to bid farewell to the late president. And we have a crew right there. Purity Museo is on standby to give us a feel of the day. Remember, it is the last day that you have the chance to view his body and pay your last respect at Parliament buildings. Purity?
Good afternoon to you, Njue in studio. We are actually currently standing on a pathway that's leading to the Parliament building. And the reason as to why we are here is just to tell you how long the queue is. Kenyans stand up in their thousands. And right now, as you can see, the movement, this is just a few meters to the gates of the Supreme Court. And all the way to the parliament. So they are being directed from here all the way to the parliament, and this is to ensure no more operations at the CBD. And therefore, you can imagine from the Supreme Court all the way to parliament, it's a long queue. They are being directed, movement of people, and from here there are 3 checks. Maybe Lugusa is trying to pan and show you how movement, people are moving, making their way to the parliament building to view the body of the late president, former president Mwai Kibaki. And so this is the pathway that's just next to the Supreme Court, and people are walking down this pathway all the way to parliament. And now, as you can see, some of the security agents right there, so they're being cleared there. Then there's another entrance just before now going to the 3rd entrance into the parliament building. And so from there now they're allowed to see, to view the body and give their last respect to the late former president Mwai Kibaki. And so it's the last day of this event. It's the last day when the body of the late former president Mwai Kibaki is lying in state. But today is the last day, and as expected, the crowd, the queues are long, and the exercise, actually, the body of the late former president Mwai Kibaki arrived in parliament some minutes to 7 in the morning, and immediately, let's say 30 minutes later, at around 7:30 in the morning, people were already being cleared to get into the parliament where the casket with the body was. And so from 7:30, things have not changed. It's a smooth flow, yes. There are no crowds. It's a continuous movement, clearance from one point to another. The exercise is very smooth, and you can imagine with such a long queue, then this tells you that Kenyans have indeed turned up in their large numbers to pay their last respect to the late former president Mwai Kibaki. So that is what we can report now, that today, the last day as expected, Kenyans are rushing to ensure that they are part of this history, to just ensure that they are paying homage to the late president. And most of them, we spoke with them, Troy, and they were remembering, most of them were mentioning the fact that the late president was able to introduce free primary education. Most of them were beneficiaries of free primary education, while others were parents who were saying that courtesy of President Mwai Kibaki, they were able to take their children through school. And also the fact that they are also talking about the economy of the country, that he was able to stabilize the economy of this country. So this is the last day. So from tomorrow, we don't expect any exercise here because it's the last day. The body was supposed to lie in state for 3 days. The first day it was lying in state was Monday, yesterday, and today becomes the last day. And so Friday, of course, there will be a national memorial service at the Njue National Stadium ahead of his burial at his Othaya home in Njue County. Thank you so much. And it's back to you, Njue, in studio.
Thank you so much, Purity Museo, live from Parliament buildings there. And as you have seen on your screen, no queues. So if you want to pay your last respects and view the body of the late president, you have slightly over 4 hours, or just over 4 hours, yes, about 4 hours before the body is taken back to the Lee Funeral Home, being the last and final day of the body laying in state at the Parliament buildings to pay your homage, your last respect to the president. Kenyans, they are picking up the pace as it is the final day. Thank you so much, Purity. We, of course, the crew has been there since Monday and will still be there till his final resting place in Othaya, Njue County. May he so rest in peace. And away from that, let's get to some politics now, where Busia Orange Democratic Movement gubernatorial aspirant Dr. Paul Otuoma has urged incumbent Governor Sospeter Ojamong to let go the political differences and form a formidable team that would strongly campaign and deliver votes for Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party presidential candidate Raila Odinga. Dr. Otuoma said Ojamong should now team up and focus on the bigger prize.
Former Funyula Member of Parliament Dr. Paul Otuoma, who won the ODM ticket in the party primaries, is now calling on Busia Governor Sospeter Ojamong to let go their political differences and form a formidable team that would strongly campaign for Raila Odinga.
What about tulishindana now? I also want to urge you. Hii mtoto mimi huwa nasema tu ni ile mashua tumepewa. But if we work hard na tushinde viti mingi za MCA za MP mpaka president, tutakuwa tunapanua nyumba yetu, si ni kweli? The more seats we win, the more tunapanua nyumba yetu. Na tukipanua nyumba yetu inamaanisha itachukua watu wengi.
ODM members in the region urged Florence Mutua, who lost in primaries, to back Otuoma.
Tunataka Raila Amolo Odinga akushike mkono, ashike Ojamo na ashike Mutua, ukwe katikati yao, wadeclare kwamba they are going to support you without any fear. Hiyo mchezo sitaki.
ODM Busia branch also replaced its secretary Innocent Oluku, who is said to be supporting Nambale Member of Parliament Sakwa Bunyasi on ANC ticket with Ichasi Imwene.
Naomba nyinyi viongozi wa vyama, viongozi wa chama chetu, tutoke twende tutafutie wale ambao chama imepeana nafasi kuenda kwa kura ya tarehe 9, tuhakikishe wameshinda.
Other aspirants are in the Busia County Governor's seat include Jubilee's Lucas Meso and DAP Kenya's Dan Mogoria. Frederick Moki for Lunchtime News.
And still on politics, supporters of Yobesh Oyaro, an ODM aspirant for Bombasi parliamentary seat in Kisii, are protesting the move by ODM to allegedly alter a direct party nomination certificate in favor of another competitor. The supporters have threatened to jump ship should the nominee certificate be upheld.
We are partying ODM.
Speaking at Nyamache Township, Elijah Onserio claimed the primaries were skewed with summoning of aspirants for certain seats to Nairobi when the exercise was taking place.
Tumeandamana ya kwamba katika Bobazi constituency mjumbe yule ambao walinyang'anya ticket, yeye tuko na yeye pamoja na tutamuongoza mpaka mwisho. Maneno ya ujanja sisi hatutaki.
And they called our candidates to Nairobi. Tunajua ya kwamba our constituency is not in Nairobi. Our constituency is here. Tuko na kura zetu kwa mfuko, ni sisi tutakaamua ni nani tutapea kura. Wao wacha wapeane tickets Nairobi sa ODM, na sisi kura zetu tunajua tunapea nani, ni Yobes, Onuonga, Oyaro.
Sisi kama vijana tuliambiwa kwamba tungefanya mchujo. Tukaenda huko tukafunzwa namna ya kufanya hii kazi na tukakuja uwanjani. Ni kweli kwamba hakuna mchujo ilifanywa. Wakasema wanaenda kutumia mbinu ya consensus. Wakasema wataangalia yule mbunge ambaye ama yule aspirant ambaye ni maarufu zaidi katika eneo bunge la Kisii, lakini hayo yote hayakufuatwa.
According to the supporters, Yobesh Oyaro reportedly lost the certificate to his counterpart, Davins Onuso, formerly of UDA party.
Sisi tulijipanga kufanya nominations, wakatusimamisha wakasema wamepeana ticket direct. Biashara ya ODM, sisi kama watu wa tumekondea.
Ticket siko kwa mfuko, kadi kwa mfuko, kura itapigwa hapa na mbunge atachaguliwa hapa, sio Nairobi, sio Bomas, sio Orange House.
The red supporters condemn the tactics used to deprive the aspirant the certificate and vow to vote for him as an independent candidate.
Tukaongoza kwa vituo siku mzima, tukaambiwa wameenda consensus. Hiyo consensus yao ikukuja, wakaenda wakafanya ukorofi wao wengine. Hata 2013 walifanya namna hiyo na 2017 wamefanyia sisi namna hiyo. Sasa sisi tumeamua tumeenda independent.
It's an open secret that whatever that is being done in one way or another, it's affecting the president, isn't it? Yes. It affects the president. So my call before 8th, before August, tafadhali wale wenye mko huko juu msiharibie baba kura.
Ruth Wamboi for Lunchtime News.
At about 1:15 the hour, we are taking our first breather, but we will be right back. I can see Bonnie wa Garrison, you say ndani kabisa. We also have Shatri, we also have Kelvin Kelly Luceno, you say tuned in from Isecheno. Thank you so much for your comments, suggestions, or even where you are watching us from. We'll be right back with more news.
Do you have a news story to share with KBC? Get in touch swiftly on email news@kbc.co.ke or call 0723-892-654 or 0734-780-124.
Shakalak, them never ready for the cash. Shakalak, them chatting one bag of trash.
Just wanna dance and listen some robado. Chill out and make love to the music I love. They can't stop my love, no. None of them can stop my love, no. They can't stop my love with it.
One love is an action. One love is action.
Gonna burn all night, everything right. I know you're feeling the vibes. Yeah, break and party. It's going on. It's gonna burn all night.
I'm on kickback with a spliffing on me dark corner. And I think about our future. How the system wicked on ya.
Hit him again. Don't expect me to stand by and do nothing. I'll report you to the authorities and I'll take him away.
No.
I think Julieta will kill herself.
What? If we get thrown out of this house, you're going to pay.
You selling your son to me?
Yes.
I never thought that you'd stoop so low as to sell your son.
Don't you realize that he's only telling you what you want to hear? And while he chooses to live like a king, you have to struggle and keep your head down. Daughters who are perfect don't tell lies nor hide bad things that happen to them.
Tell me the truth, Paulina.
Welcome back, and just in case you joined us, this is KBC Lunchtime News. Elsewhere, as Kenyans from all walks of life trooped to Parliament buildings in Nairobi to pay their last respects to the late retired President Mwai Kibaki, those residing away from the capital city were catered for as well. Condolence books have been opened in county offices for the locals to pen down their condolence messages.
At the Uhuru Nakazi building in Mombasa, it was a rare show of solidarity as the residents in their numbers started thronging the Coast Regional Headquarters office to sign the condolence book in honor of the late retired President Mwai Kibaki, who died last Friday. Most residents described the country's third president as a charismatic, diligent and progressive leader. Led by Imtiaz Sayani, who is a Mombasa business leader and philanthropist, the Abagusi community chairman Dixon Kibagendi, and the Coastal Gema community chairman Crispus Waithaka, they all concurred that Kibaki left a legacy with long-lasting benefits such as a new constitution, a revived economy, democracy and free primary education.
Tunamshukuru, na vile vile alikuwa rafiki yake mkubwa kwa hiyo miaka yote, na ametumana kutoa pole personally. Mimi nije nitoe pole kwa familia yake na watu wake wote.
Tunakumbuka kama Wakisii, wakati wake mbolea ilienda mpaka ikafika shilingi 7,000. Yeye mwenyewe aliamuliza waziri wa agriculture by that time, ambaye alikuwa ni mheshimiwa deputy president, wakarudisha mpaka 2,000 pale Kisii, na sisi tukafurahia na tukafanya tukawa tunalima na tunapanda bila wasiwasi.
Mkoa huu wa Pwani, sehemu hii ya Mombasa, jimbo la Mombasa County, tunaomboleza na Wakenya wengine wote na jamii zingine zote, tukiomboleza kiongozi wetu, na tuna hakika kwamba hata mazishi tutaweza kufika, ndio tuonyeshe Wakenya wengine wote tuko pamoja katika kona zote za nchi.
Such condolence books have been opened in county headquarters for people to mourn the late Kibaki. Edwin Austin for Lunchtime News.
Well said there, and if you haven't had that opportunity again, this is the last day that you can view the late president's body and also pay your last respects, at least at Parliament buildings before the conclusion at around 5 p.m. Speaking of the president, a lot has been said, and perhaps to start with the last story there, let me be joined by Abraham Maina, who is a youth leader and also a political and governance expert. Abraham, you've had what some of the sentiments that there from Mombasa talking about. He was also very generous. The president was also quite generous, and one of the philanthropists there has talked about he had the heart of giving. And it's one of the lessons that young people, and in particular you being a youth leader, we can emulate the president.
You're right. What we can say is that, or rather, our president, or rather the former president, he was very generous in various terms, because generosity can also depend on various aspects of life. For example, what I would say as a young person, as a youth leader, the president was so good in that he could direct us to a place whereby we can get the fortune, whereby we can get the income, the resources. Unlike the predecessors who used to give the cash, the handout, when the president came into office, he strategized for the youth on how to create employment. And his most focus was to ensure that the youth have the jobs, they have their income, they can depend on their own project. He could not entertain cash handout as we could see the period of President Daniel Moi, but he created an atmosphere for us as a youth and Kenyans in general, whereby we could enter into business and the business could thrive. You could enter into farming and farming could thrive. You enter into various sectors. Every department of the economy was moving well, such that he only guided people. And his generosity, he empowered the circles, he empowered the treasuries to ensure that every application that's done by the youth and the women, they are able to get and they're able to proceed. For example, when you talk about the finance, there is a program that is already there that was started by Moi Kibaki, such that youth are given at least, I think about 30% of the tenders. Unlike before, most of the tenders were awarded to the old people, they were awarded to people who are in business, people who have money, people who have wealth, who have influence. But he allocated a certain percentage must be directed to the youth. Another percentage must be directed to the women. In that capacity, he builded the youth, he builded also the women, such that now the youth were able to establish themselves in business. They could apply tenders and get the award. Women could apply tender and get the award. Unlike before only a few people could do the tenders with the government. But Mwai Kibaki, when he came in office, he opened all those sectors to the youth, such that the youth could now enjoy that platform of working with the government. Employment were increased. Every portion, including now the police sector and all that, the youth got a very good opportunity, and Kenyans in general. So he was generous in a way that he created a platform that will give you food tomorrow, give you income tomorrow, that will ensure that tomorrow you grow to another financial state. So I would say that he was generous in that level. Unlike those people who expect generosity of handout. Handout may not help, but when it shows people how to do the business, that is what is paramount.
Yes, and a lot of people have talked about, even the politician Wafoli talked about the president in terms of giving people money when it comes to politics. That was a no-no. Handouts were a no-no. But away from that, I remember the county police commander in I think it was in Nandi or in Narok, yes, John Kizito talked about the president was very keen when it comes to matters education, and a lot has been said, leave alone the free primary education. A lot of young people were able to be assisted when it comes to the HELB loans as well, which actually, other than the HELB loan, the CDF, he came up with the CDF, and a lot have benefited from the money by bursaries, and it has been quite a journey ever since. Even corporates now have joined in to try and help the youth. But all this were the brainchild of the former president.
Very true, very true, very true. That's very true. That's why the president was generous on that level. He was not generous on the other people as they expected. Especially those people who are familiar with President Moi. They expected when they get closer to the president, they will get some money. Because especially when I was in high school, I remember very well when the President Moi could visit around that area and we sing for him, he could give us money in the form of handout.
Yeah, I remember
and we could celebrate.
Yes.
But when Kibaki came in office, things changed. But the good thing including myself, I'm also imitating him to ensure the economy grow and we're able to help one another in this country.
And one of the people there from, I think from Kisii, has talked about, I remember that day when the fertilizer prices were out of reach to many farmers, 7,000 a bag, and the head of state was really disturbed because a lot of Kenyans could not afford that, and he instructed the Minister of Agriculture back then, who was the current Deputy President, to lower those prices so that all farmers, regardless of where you are, where you're farming from, you're able to put food on the table and get some money as well.
Very true, very true. And you remember very well after that, the agriculture thrived very well. And previously, especially in the rural areas, you could see some farmers who were even doing the dairy farming. They could have a lot of milk, but there was no market. But when President Moi Kibaki came in office, he ensured that all sectors of farming are able to grow. For example, what you said about the agriculture sector, you could plant, then you have the market. You could have the seed, you could, you could have the fruits, the seed were available, the fertilizer became affordable, such that now when a farmer have his final produce or rather final product, he could make a profit. And now, unlike before there was no market, the fertilizer are very expensive, so there is no, when the farmers do their farming, there was no return. But when Moi Kibaki came in office, he made sure that the fertilizer were at a lower price. There was a market for the farmers. Farmers could get somewhere to go and sell their produce, get the return, get the income. And I remember very well at that period, most of people who were in Nairobi, when the farming thrived very well, they decided to go and concentrate on farming. And the farming grew very, very well. And most people were able to build themselves on the farming sector. And you also remember his period is when the economy has also grown in other business level. You find even most of the vehicles were bought during his time. That is why we started experiencing a traffic jam. Before there was no traffic jam, it was just a minor one. But when the President Moi Kibaki came in office, the economy grew in all sectors, such that even people could afford their own cars. Now we get to another challenges of traffic and all that. He built the economy very well, and the far we are is through his foundation.
And let's now look at Kibaki, the diplomatic man, the peacemaker, because looking at the region when he was president, we had issues with Somalia. We had issues in South Sudan. He helped a lot in making the country peaceful. We also had a civil war in Liberia and Sierra Leone. And he did send his troops there. Many people may not realize that Kibaki authorized the Kenyan team or the Kenya Defense Forces to participate in the peacekeeping efforts there.
That's very true. And he sent his soldiers, he sent the peacemaking, because he's a man who believes in peace. And he concentrated on that. And I remember very well that most of the politicians could accuse him that he is spending the resources on another country peace. He should leave them alone. But he invested very much on peace and security of other nations. He is a president who loved even not only Kenya, but he loved even outside Kenya, the neighboring country. And you also remember that even when we had a crisis in this country, he had no problem to do this handshake, like the handshake he got recent, he had no problem to have even Mkatenusu for the purposes of having peace in our country. And there is no other president who have done that. Remember the period of Daniel Teacher of Moi, there was nothing like Mkatenusu. Remember when there was issues, or rather there was the resort were contested by the former prime minister now. When the Kofi Annan came, the president had no problem to agree and to have a handshake and agree and share the government, what we call the nusu mukate. He is a person who was not selfish. So he could be able to share the resources, the mukate with the prime minister and his team. So I would say he's a peacemaker, and we can see even internally. Externally, he was a peacemaker. Even internally, when there was crisis, he was able to listen to the competitors, listen what they want, and he could share with them for the purposes of peace.
Yes, and he became a leader when he was quite young, and all through he has never been mentioned in any cases. And I'm quite sure a lot of young people, and I grew up also, I was a young man when he took over office, and he really shaped and mentored a lot of people. And those are some of the lessons that we need to pick up, and the young people also need to pick up. I was at a parliament building yesterday, and I saw quite young people who perhaps were born when Kibaki just took office, but they were able to share and taste what Kibaki had to provide. What are some of the lessons as a young person, as a young leader, can we pick up from the legacy of the late president?
Indeed, I would say that it's only that death has to come. If we were to ask as Kenyans, would you say that let Mwai Kibaki not go? Because Mwai Kibaki, he's a man that is a real model. He's a real model. Because as you have mentioned, you have never had any corruption deal with the president, Mwai Kibaki. Remember, he had been a vice president to Daniel Teacher of Moi. He was a minister in that government. In various sectors, he was a finance minister. Then he took over. Then it is the time now. He also was a leader of opposition.
Yes. In
all those sectors, we have not had any accusation, whether proved or not, any accusation regarding his corrupt deal. And when he came in office, because he understood that the people that are working with him, some of them are corrupt, he ensured that no corruption will thrive in the government. Remember, he also instituted the anti-corruption body to ensure that there is no corruption that is going to continue his government. So he was a man of integrity. He was a man that was ready to ensure that no corruption deal is going to continue in this continent, in this country and beyond. So he ensured that the anti-corruption law is passed. The institutions that were to fight with the anti-corruption were well established to ensure that the corruption is no more in this country. And he was able to do the corrupt leaders. And our country enjoyed to thrive because corruption was limited.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Abraham. We are going to be continuing with this discussion a little bit later, but for now, let's take a quick break, but we'll be right back after these messages.
They never ready for the cash. Boom shakalak, them chatting one bag of trash.
Just wanna dance and listen some rubber dub. Chill out and make love to the music I love.
They can't stop my love, no. None of them can stop my love, no. They can't stop my love with it.
Umefuata nini? Bana, ameniambia ukweli leo. Can keep a secret.
Naona to introduce kitengo cha fashion and events katika kampuni yetu.
Kuna tatizo lolote na Pili ambalo wewe walijua? Lakini wewe kuja hapa bila kuniambia sio kaida yako.
interview waenda na ukirudi mikono mitupu. Ni maranga?
Welcome back. You're still watching KBC Lunchtime News. For now, let's first of all cross over to the Safari Park Hotel, where Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i, together with more than 54 education ministers, have converged there for a conference to discuss matters education. And because he's currently addressing the conference, let's first of all cross over.
Education Summit held in London last July. Kenya rallied world leaders through the Kenyatta Declaration to commit to increased domestic education spending. Leaders recognized that domestic financing is and will remain the most significant and sustainable form of funding for education. And heads of state pledged to maintain or increase education spending to at least 20% of the total public expenditure. I am proud to confirm to you that Kenya has honored that commitment and allocates about 25% of its budget to education. High-performing education systems recognize the quality of school system cannot exceed the quality of its teachers. Top-performing schools systems attract the strongest principals to the toughest schools and the most talented teachers to the most challenging classrooms. These systems also give national recognition to the critical role of teachers and reward strong performers. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to challenge you as education ministers to harness the Commonwealth of knowledge and experiences to more strategically build capacity and broaden the skills of our teachers through programs such as training arrangements, knowledge exchange, as well as exchange of lecturers and students. We have witnessed the value of such arrangements in Kenya. The research partnership program between the Kenya Medical Research Institute and the University of Oxford, for example, has been hugely successful in producing world-class scientific innovations, nurturing scientists and expanding research capacity. We need many more such partnerships amongst ourselves to reduce the widening gap between rich and poor nations. It does not augur well for shared global prosperity and stability when the best global universities, quote unquote, as ranked in the US News database, are predominantly Western universities. Partnerships, arrangements of research sharing, such as Rwanda has with the Carnegie Mellon University, provide a useful model for reducing the gap between the rich and the poor countries. In a similar vein, Commonwealth Ministers of Education should be alarmed to note that by 2050, Korea and Japan will be enrolling 80% or more of their high school graduates to higher education, while countries such as the Central African Republic and Niger will be struggling to reach 5% enrollment in higher education. These are critical issues that should be central to your deliberations this week. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to posit that the Commonwealth, in all respects, given its resources, experience, and structure, is actually in some way, especially in the education sector, a sleeping giant. I invite you to seize this unprecedented moment in history and wake this giant up. You can do so by recognizing that your role as education ministers is no longer to simply keep the sector on track. You need to fundamentally recognize that you are the people who will reorganize the sector, re-engineer it, and reimagine it boldly and creatively. Make education a catalyst for releasing the full potential of the 2.5 billion inhabitants of the Commonwealth, which will in turn enable the organization to realize its promise of shared goals of prosperity, democracy, and peace, increase its global bunch. I am confident that education ministers participating in this conference have the capacity and the political will and support to lead the broad-based education transformation that we speak about from the front. As I conclude my remarks, I wish to thank all of you once again for taking time to attend this important meeting and for choosing to be in Kenya at this point in time. For those of you who are here, I wish you fruitful deliberations, safe travel back home after the conference, and I would also like to take this opportunity to extend an invitation to all of you to visit and enjoy Kenya's rich tourist attractions in Nairobi. It is now my distinct honor and pleasure to declare the 21st Conference of the Commonwealth Education Ministers officially open. Thank you.
There you have it, the former Education CS, who is the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, there has officially launched the conference, the 21st Conference for Commonwealth Education Ministers. 44 ministers have gathered at the Safari Park Hotel for today and tomorrow in a summit that, among others, talking about the education levels in not only in Kenya but in the world as well. Some figures there. The president, the CS, they are talking about a quarter of Kenya's budget going to the education sector, and calling on other countries to also emulate that, so that education levels can be boosted, and especially in Africa. He has also talked about partnership with international education institution bearing fruits as the levels of education are being jump-started here in Africa. And also he has talked about the Kenyatta Declaration on Matters Education, increasing domestic education levels as well. We'll have a comprehensive report a little bit later with our very own Zainab Said, who is keenly following that conference. In other news, a section of women in Kajiado County are calling on the community to embrace the modern times and allow them an equal share of inheritance with their brothers. The women have decried discrimination from the community's traditions, which dictates that a woman can only inherit property if she was married. They say this practice has been unfair to unmarried women, as it leaves them with nothing to fend for themselves.
The inheritance for women in Kajiado County has been a hotly contested one for a long time, but with civilization and formal education, the community is slowly having a change of heart. Most Maasai men in Kajiado now say they are willing to allow their daughters to inherit their property.
Mungu akinijalia na watoto wangu nita-treat the same. Msichana na kijana wako the same. Kwa hiyo hata msichana akiolewa, mimi nitasema apewe pali kidogo ya shamba la sikini, si pali kubwa.
Na wasichana sasa wanatretiwa equally to boys. So hata kwa kurithi mali sahi wameruhusiwa. Sio shida kubwa tena kama mzee ama mzazi yako na wasichana peke yake. So sahi tunachukulia wasichana hali sawa na wavulana.
Some, however, are still of the opinion that they ought to inherit from their husband's homestead, which the women in the community say sidelines the unmarried ones.
Lakini tunaona msichana sasa akija kurithi sasa nyumba kwa baba yake ni kama kunyanyasa msichana, amerudi kunyanyasa wale watoto, wale vijana wanaridhiwa ni wabibi zao, watoto wametoka kwa mafamilia mengine.
For the women here, the change of heart is a huge reprieve.
Hapo awali haingewezekana. Hiyo ilikuwa ni kitu inahusiana na wazee. Ilikuwa ni waume wetu ndio walikuwa wanahusika na mambo ya mashamba, lakini mambo yamegeuka. Juu Wamasai pia wamesoma na mambo imeenda ikageuka.
Yusufar reporting for Lunchtime News.
In other news, Kilgore's Member of Parliament Gideon Conchela has pledged to unite the communities living in Narok County if elected senator in the forthcoming elections. He says the concerns of all communities in the county will be attended to without favor.
Kilgore's Member of Parliament, Gideon Conchela, says he will use his position as senator to push for the creation of sub-counties in Narok South and Narok West if elected into office.
Hapa Narok South na Narok West ni pahali ambao wananchi hawa wana haki ya kupewa district yao ili waweze kuwa na district administration na security ikiwe karibu na hawa. Badala ya watu kukimbia kutoka kwingineo, watu watoke huko kuja Lolonga na kwingineo na Narok County, iwe sub county yao imetengwa huko na wapewe kwa maana district is an administrative zone ambayo hiyo ni jukumu la serikali.
The lawmaker says the region needs administrative structures closer to the people. Conchela said proposals contained in the Building Bridges initiative would have worked for the benefit of all Kenyans. While drumming up support for Raila Odinga, he said the Azimio la Umoja campaign is working towards uniting all Kenyans, even as he called on residents to ignore leaders who are preaching divisive politics. Beatrice Getonyingetich, Lunchtime News.
Elsewhere, Samburu North MP Alois Letoimaga has called on the government to step up the ongoing drought mitigation measures to ensure all learners report to school. The lawmaker says many students in Samburu County may be forced to miss school due to the effects of drought.
The ongoing drought in parts of Samburu North is now a threat to learners in the region. Locals say they have lost livestock to the biting drought, and there seem to be no prospects of the young ones resuming their classes.
Tunalia serikali yetu itusaidie, la sivyo hakuna njia nyingine. Watoto wataenda shule, utapeleka mtoto shule za mbali, waende wafanye nini? Wafukuzwe.
Leaders in the area says the government must do everything in its power to mitigate the situation before it's too late.
Hatuna mshahara, wala hatuna makasi. Hata ile watoto wetu wamemaliza samani, wanakaa tu kurangarana kwa kijiji kulewa hapa na mbele. Hawana kazi hata ile wa mbele.
Tarasio Lotwambo says he's unable to pay school fees for his children after his only source of livelihood was greatly affected by the harsh climate.
Tangu maisha hatujawahi kuona kitu ambaye ukame ya aina hii. Imemaliza ng'ombe kabisa, mbuzi, hata ngamia yote meisha.
Mimi naona kwamba wengine watoto watabaki kukaa nyumbani, na bila atakaa nyumbani unasakufa njaa, kwa sababu hakuna tegemeo lingine kama mali sisi zilikuwa tunategemea.
Samburu North Member of Parliament Alois Letoimaga is calling for a timely distribution of relief food to aid the school feeding program to help retain learners.
Kwa sababu hii shule sote ya boarding na secondary sote inategemea chakula ndio ukipa watoto kwa shule walipe fees ile ya tuition fee. Nataka kuomba Ministry of Relief hii social program hii chakula tunapeana relief tupatie secondary schools. Secondary schools we allocated special allocation ya maize, beans, rice wapee kwa hizo mashule wakati huu, kwa sababu mustasi hana chochote ya kulipa fees.
Timothy Kipnusu for Lunchtime News.
Politicians have been urged to consider the interest of the less privileged in the society even as they develop their manifestos in a bid to eradicate poverty. Human rights defender and philanthropist Newton Ogada said the poverty levels in rural areas have hit a worrying level due to the high cost of living, and the most affected are the vulnerable group that include widows and orphans. Ogada, who has assisted the construction of at least 1,100 houses for widows in Homa Bay County through his God Will Provide organization, also said the immense suffering of the rural people should trigger a different approach to politics during the electioneering period.
Like now, we are in a
a month of election, a season of election, you will find we are running around meeting people. We have our leaders walking around, they're asking for votes, but they don't ask how people live back in their houses. So I'm just pleading with the government, if they can create a certain ministry which supports the vulnerable, the needy, the widows, and the orphans within the community. I think that will help us grow.
And back to education matters, where the Ministry of Education has embarked on a national talent training program aimed at enabling the young people commercialize their talents. The program, undertaken by the Department for Post-Training and Skills Development, will help identify, develop, create, business and protect products of talents.
Our training program aims at enabling the youth tap into their talents for a living. The program, being undertaken by the Department for Post-Training and Skills Development, will help mold the talents of young people, turning them to commercial ventures for them to earn from the same.
We are providing a lot in terms of networks for people who have already done very well. We are also providing those who are financiers also to the youth, and all this will help them in terms of employment.
According to the Education Secretary, Dr. Njue Kariuki, the country had high but untapped talent among the youth, and the main objective of the program was to turn the group from job seekers to job creators.
Youth have a lot of potential. They didn't give statistics, but they said that the potential out there is huge and it needs to be tapped so that they can earn a living or a livelihood out of this talent.
The Director of Technical Education, Dr. Mesha Kopora, termed unemployment as a major challenge in the country, affecting thousands of young people, yet many talents can make them eke a living.
It's going to do a lot in terms of unemployment, because when our youths are trained how to use their own talents to create employment, it's going to be very important, because the youths now will start creating jobs. They will start businesses, they will employ others, and therefore this program is going to assist them.
In the last
And now to some good news for the farmers, as the government has announced a 5.7 billion shillings fertilizer subsidy that is expected to reduce the cost of the commodity in the coming weeks. Under the subsidy program, fertilizer prices have been reduced by more than 50%. However, the Ministry of Agriculture has capped the number of bags per farmers to 20. Farmers in Nakuru have, however, decried the number, saying this is not enough for farmers with huge tracts of land.
Last year, farmers have been facing major setbacks during planting season due to high fertilizer prices. To deal with the situation, the government has set aside 5.7 billion shillings under a fertilizer subsidy program. Under the subsidy, farmers will now pay 2,800 shillings for a 50 kg of DAP fertilizer from a high of 6,000 shillings, 1,850 shillings for CAN and 2,700 shillings for urea, NPK 3,000 shillings, MOP 2,500 shillings and sulfate ammonium for 2,500 shillings. However, a section of farmers in Nakuru County has decried the small number of fertilizer bags per farmer.
Mwenye alikuwa amesema tutapewa mbolea kwa bei ya mfuko 20 na kwa saa hii hatuna, na kuna wengine tunaambiwa ati mbolea iko ndani na hakuna. Sasa hiyo tunashindwa tutafanya nini?
Imesemekana fertilizer imebaki ya watu 20, imebaki 100. Wengine tugoje. Na nimesikia ushugu sana.
Farmers say though the initiative has helped to reduce the prices of the commodity by half, most national cereals and produce board stores are yet to stock the subsidized fertilizer, affecting their planting season.
Lakini ile kitu nimesikia uchungu kabisa, ni kuona pickup inafika hapa, inasema inakatazwa kuingia, inaingilia mlango ya chini. Ile iko pale chini. Halafu tukikaa tunaona inatoka na fertilizer. Lakini sisi raia tunaambiwa kuna fertilizer. Hiyo ni uchungu kubwa sana.
Vile umesikia mambo nyenye wanakuja wanapitisha gari, wengine tuna gari hapa. Lakini hizo gari zetu zinaenda mtu tuachoma mafuta. Kama serikali wanaweza kusaidia, Walishuffle hao watu wenye wako kwa Kenya Side kwa sababu wamekuwa huko kwa kama 5 to 10 years. Watuleta wengine wapya wenye wanaweza wakasikia kilio ya yule mwananchi wa chini jamani.
Farmers are now worried that the shortage is exposing them to exploitation by private dealers. There are fears that the fertilizer crisis, coupled up with delayed long rains, may affect production this year. Reporting for Lunchtime News, I am Teresa Mutai.
And in sports, Manchester City will take a slender first-leg advantage to the Santiago Bernabeu to face Real Madrid after beating the Spanish side 4-3 in the first leg at the Etihad last night. The two other sides contesting a Champions League final place will meet tonight at Anfield, where Liverpool will host Villarreal.
In the right place, at the right time. Benzema trying to take up a position, but Vinicius Jr. goes all the way.
The two sides will meet in the second leg at Bernabeu on Wednesday next week. Liverpool face Spanish side Villarreal in the other semi-final, with the first leg at Anfield tonight.
Indeed, fireworks tonight. Who will take the day? Of course, we will be bringing you the goals, the sights and the sounds in our subsequent bulletins tomorrow, as soon as Liverpool face Villarreal. That's all we had for the news, but don't go away. We still have plenty more as we continue to eulogize the third president of the Republic of Kenya, Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. We'll be right back after these short messages.
Him again. Don't expect me to stand by and do nothing. I'll report you to the authorities and I'll take him away.
No.
I think Julieta will kill herself.
What? If we get thrown out of this house, you're going to pay.
Are you selling your son to me?
Yes.
I never thought that you'd stoop so low as to sell your son.
Don't you realize that he's only telling you what you want to hear? And while he chooses to live like a king, you have to struggle and keep your head down. Daughters who are perfect don't tell lies nor hide bad things that happen to them.
Tell me the truth, Paulina.
Promise me to take good care of my sister.
You can count on me.
I can't bring myself to accept that my only son and my daughter are going to get married. I can't do it.
I'll do my best to get the company back on its feet. Please calm down. Give me a bit more time.
Your best choice is to transfer the ownership of Shu Feng to me.
What?
There's no way. I won't accept it. I won't accept it.
Let's put the past behind us. Just come back to me.
Welcome back, and you are watching KBC Lunchtime News. We still have some more news items for you here, and especially this one, where phase 2 of the Mombasa Port Area Road development will be completed mid-next year as the project enters a critical phase. The project involves the installation of 2 bridges, one at the Mteza and the other at Mwache, spanning more than 2 kilometers and 680 meters respectively. Officials from the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, have said the 28 billion shillings project is more than 50% complete. Our reporter, Nduta Mokami, brings us the report from Mombasa.
Phase 2 of the Mombasa Port Area Road development is considered critical since it's currently the missing link of the 3-phase project. Already phases 1 and 2 are complete, which are crucial in opening up the port area and decongesting the Mombasa-Nairobi highway. The project is jointly funded by the governments of Kenya and Japan at a cost of 28 billion shillings and was launched in 2015. According to the officials from JICA, once all the three packages are completed, the travel time and vehicle operating costs within the counties of Mombasa and Kwale will be reduced by more than 40% and catalyze the development of the coast special economic zones.
So this road is going to open all the inter-Andia and also connect the Mombasa together with Kwale, and it will be able to ease the traffic congestion through the Rikon, which is a big bottleneck, and make a good access to the South Coast and to Tanzania.
Phase 2 involves the construction of a bridge of about 3 kilometers from the Mwache interchange across the sea, including a pile slab type viaduct. JICA says Phase 2 is at a critical stage with construction works now on schedule and at an advanced stage.
When we were going into Phase 2, it was not a very easy aspect that you are getting over to add a debt. It had to be justified on the basis of the special economic zone. How much of the traffic that was going to be generated from the special economic zone.
The project is also known as the Mombasa Southern Bypass, will connect three main ports corridors, including the Mombasa-Nairobi Highway, Mombasa-Malindi Highway, and the Mombasa-Lunga-Lunga Highway, and is expected to minimize traffic gridlocks in Mombasa and its environs.
The government is urging players in the animal product value chain to adopt effective and efficient food safety system for quality food. Agriculture Chief Administrative Secretary Lawrence Omuhaka says gaps in the implementation of safe food provisions is key in attaining food sustainability amid growing demand for food.
The policies that boost food safety lessen the burden on our healthcare system that is already reeling from the effects of COVID-19, malaria, TB, and other communicable diseases. The government is happy that some of our biggest producers, led by Kenchik, have perfected this policy in their production value chain.
I believe it is our role to actively participate in tackling issues that plague our country and the global society at large.
Across borders, Tanzania has attracted more customers to park and ship their consignments by expanding and improving some of its seaports, which has increased annual financial earnings. More details next in our Africa Business Roundup.
Tanzania's expansion and improvement of seaports of Dar es Salaam, Tanga and Mtwara have started attracting more customers such as South Sudan to pack and ship their consignment. These are seen more revenues, which is a form of cargo handling, and that affects the entire value chain in the road and railway infrastructures. Transporters from various countries are using Tanzania for their imports and exports due to its improved efficiency, safety and security in the ports. According to Tanzania's Port Authority, the ports have hit the target of handling 18 million tons of cargo and earning $4 billion for the 2021-2022 financial year. President Samia Suluhu Hassan has approved up to $2 million for the purchasing tools to improve efficiency and increase cargo handling capacity. Meanwhile, the Cameroon sugar company Sosukam will resume its activities after being shut down due to a hike in fuel prices. The company received 222,000 litres of diesel from the French Somdia with an assurance from the Ministry of Water and Energy that the supply will continue. Sosukam continues activities in its Nkoteng unit, where it produces 500 tons of sugar per day. The leader in the Cameroonian sugar market, with 70% of the market share, says it has the equivalent of several months of consumption in the stock that allows it to operate for days and will therefore continue to supply the market. Finally, Malawi's Bank of Reserves has published a double expenditure from $1.7 million to $3.3 million due to increased spending in the recurrent and development budget lines. The spending lines under recurrent expenditures increased by 70.5%, which was reinforced by a rise in development in expenses. However, this did not affect total revenues collection, which saw a monthly increase of 11% in January 2022. The Treasury closed the month with a deficit of 1% of the gross domestic product, with a decrease of 0.4%.
Further afield, cash-strapped Sri Lanka announced on Tuesday it would sell long-term visas to attract a desperately needed foreign currency after the island nation ran out of dollars to pay even for food and fuel. For more details, next in our international business news.
Foreigners who deposit a minimum of $100,000 locally will be granted permission to live and work in Sri Lanka for 10 years under the Golden Paradise Visa Program. Under the program, the money payable will need to be deposited in a local bank account for the duration of the visa. The government also approved the granting of 5-year visas to any foreigner spending a minimum of $75,000 to buy an apartment on the island. Trading at the Colombo Stock Exchange was halted 3 times Tuesday as prices plunged, with the blue chip S&P index closing down 9.75%. That came on top of a near 13% drop on Monday, the first day of trading since a 2-week break during which the government hiked interest rates and defaulted on its $51 billion foreign debt. Equities have shed 47% of their value since January, with the local currency falling by about 40% against the greenback in the past month. Fuel prices have almost doubled since December, and the government on Tuesday announced an 81% increase in the price of cooking gas. Meanwhile, Tesla shares have fallen after investor concern that boss Elon Musk may have to sell shares in the electric car maker to help pay for the takeover of Twitter. Tesla had more than $125 billion wiped off its market value on Tuesday. The slump in Tesla's values may pose problems for our $12.5 billion loan Mr. Musk had secured against his stake in the company. Tesla's share price has taken a hammering, with some investors wondering whether Mr. Musk's Twitter purchase is bad for Tesla. Shares dropped 12.2% from just over $1 trillion to $906 billion. Tesla shareholders are also concerned the deal could mean he's selling off a stake in a car farm. As part of the deal, he has stamped up a $21 billion in equity himself. Finally, most Asian stocks indices fell on Wednesday as growing fears of a global economy drove investors to dump riskier assets in favor of safe havens such as US dollars and government bonds. Financial markets are grappling with multiple risks, including the prospect for aggressive US interest rate hikes, a sharp slowdown in China, surging inflation, and the war in Ukraine. European markets looked set to follow Asia lower. In early trade, the pan-region Euro Stoxx 50 futures slipped 0.38% to 0.12%. News that Russia had briefly cut gas supplies to Poland deepened worries, sending the MSCI World Equity Index slumping to a 13-month low. Terry Njenga, Channel 1 Business.
And back home, politicians who lost in the recently concluded ODM party primaries have been urged to rally behind the Azimio la Umoja campaign. Kisumu Central ODM nominee Joshua Oron says the work has only begun and all must be fixed on the prize, and that is August 9 poll. Oron is one among few entrants in the ODM lineup after beating Kisumu Central MP Fred Ouda to the Orange Democratic Movement ticket.
I'm welcoming everybody, those who supported us and those who did not support us. Today is a new dawn, a journey that is beginning, a journey that will embrace everybody. And I embrace those who did not support us, those who supported us, so that we work together. The most important thing is that we need to unite to ensure that Raila Amolo Odinga becomes the next president for Kenya.
And that's how we put a cap on KBC Lunchtime News, but we still have live coverage of the last and final day of public viewing of the late President Mwai Kibaki at Parliament before his journey finally concludes on Saturday in Odaya. And KBC, we have endeavored to ensure that we take you step by step to the last day. Remember, today is the final day. If you haven't made your way to Parliament, this is the final day. And joining me in studio, Abraham Maina. Thank you so much for tuning in, and of course, we've been here for a while. Thank you so much for your insight as well. And going back to our discussion, we have had a lot when it comes to foreign policy, where some countries have even banned visas for politicians allied to some governments. But we saw that in the Moi government, and we never saw that in the Kibaki government. How would you talk about, or what is your insight when it comes to how Kibaki, the late president, interacted and worked with other leaders in terms of foreign policy?
What happened is that when the president Mwai Kibaki came into office, he's the first president who energized and strategized much to fight corruption. And he instituted the anti-corruption body, instituted the organization, and empowered that body that were meant to fight the corruption, the anti-corruption unit, or other anti-corruption body. And through his leadership, the other countries, the other institutions and other nations could see how he is running his institution, or rather he is running the government affairs. On that character of fighting corruption, because he was very much keen to ensure that no corruption in the government, because he knew that when there is a lot of corruption, or there is a corruption in the nation, the economy cannot grow. The money meant to go to a certain development will not get to that development. So through his way of running the government, he was able to create a very good trust with other institutions, or with other nations and various institutions beyond our country. And therefore, we could not see such issues of people being banned to go to another country, because they were restricted. The people had manners, people had good characters, people could obey and follow the rules, because his legacy, or rather his leadership, was very strict. So you could not see people misbehaving, because his leadership was very strategic. His leadership was a role model leadership. This is why we do not see those people being bad like any other time, because people another time they did not have a certain way to do. People could misbehave. People could take whatever they want. Nobody could question them. And this is why the other nation could interfere, because they saw that there was no well-organized government. But when Mwai Kibaki took over, he was able to show leadership in the country, and therefore people were able to obey, follow the rule of law, and corruption was minimized.
Yes, and you being a youth leader and looking at what the late president did, yes, he did take the office at an advanced age, but he was the first president, looking at the other two regimes, he was the first president to give the youth a chance. And not only a chance, he also came up with so many youth programs, including the Youth Fund and other youth programs, meaning he wanted to give the youth a chance. Yes, indeed, right now we have a lot of youths, but we had to start somewhere, and he is the president who started.
Yes, very true. Very indeed. He ensured that he empowered the youth, as you said. And this is why you see, when you compare the period of the former president, Daniel Teacher Moi, and when Mwai Kibaki came in office, you could see the period of Daniel Teacher Moi, there was a lot of youth. So many youth loitering around, so many youth engaged in drunkard, so many youth involved in other affairs that were immoral. You see corruption, there was this. They're engaging in other bad affairs. But when the president came and empowered the youth, you could see there was a lot of transformation from people who are drunkard to people now who could concentrate in various business, in sectors. The youth who are jobless, now they got the job. So instead of engaging in drunkardness, they were busy doing their own thing. And you remember when the youth become drunkard, they were becoming drunkard because they had nothing to do. And they wanted to console themselves because life was not easy. Therefore, they could drink to ensure that they fight that issue morally. However, the problem still persists. But when the president, Mwai Kibaki, came in office, he empowered the youth through the youth fund. He ensured there is the money for school is available, the help is well funded. He ensured also that there is allocation of tenders that youth are being given so that they can be busy. And also remember, through the way he empowered the economy of this country, the youth were able now to get employment on the various sector. Even the public sector and the private sector thrived very well, that they could create employment for the youth. And therefore, the youth felt that they are well catered for. And this is how you see now the youth could not complain during that era. The government were running very well. And this is why we are praising his leadership and his government. Mwai Kibaki is a real role model. And as even myself, I feel that we need to copy this president, his legacy, his leadership. Other presidents in other continents could also come and see how he is running his affairs, because he was the first president to do so many changes within a very short span of period.
And it's a good thing that you've been able to touch something on the youth and the use of substances. And I remember you to crack up the nation when he talked about kukula pombe, and he said that you should work, not only to just go to dens, drinking dens. And back then, before he seized power, there was so much narcotics, and a lot of youth had indulged into local liquors, so to speak, and third generation drinks. So we do remember when he was seizing power, the country, really, the youth were not really as agile as they were when he left office. He did away with a lot of, substance abuse, and you remember the alcohols. Every now and then you'd hear 20 people have died, 30, 15. I remember even in my home county, over 40 people once did die because of the local liquor. And incidentally, 90% of those people who died were the young people. But he was able to at least streamline the sector and urge the youth to kind of focus on their lives rather than the drinking and the dens and the narcotics.
That's true. That's very true. Remember the Motudo law came when he was the president. It was meant to ensure that those liquor, those unlicensed alcohol, were being abolished, because there's the one that were causing problem in this country and killing our youth. So he was able to institute that through Motudo law, or rather Motudo bill. It went through. And remember also, people used to take beer even in the morning at 8. Some could go to the bar at 7 a.m. in the morning. Others at midday. This law that came in force strictly restricted the period of drinking the beer, and also strictly restricted the bar owners, the restaurant owners, on the kind of the liquor, or rather the kind of beer they should sell. So such that those unlicensed beer were abolished, that were killing our youth, that were making our youth to be involved in drunkenness. Very cheap beer, but we are destroying our youth. Mwai Kibaki was able to eliminate it. And then when he set period from 5 p.m. is the time we are supposed to drink, he ensured that every person is building the economy. From morning all the way to 5, you should be working, so that when you finish what you are doing, you can now go and take the beer. And he could also advise the youth and also all the people at large that they should not take excessive beer. When you are taking the beer, don't take excessive. Take in a sober manner. Take in a responsible manner. So the president was able to mentor our society, to mentor the people, to ensure that they come out from the country of being drunkard to become people who are responsible. And he instituted the rules. So he first started by advising the people on how dangerous the beer is, how dangerous it is to take horribly without care. And then from there, he instituted the law that to ensure that people are restricted to the time frame of drinking the beer, to ensure that our country and the economy is running well. And then number 3, he ensured that those people that were idle, they had nothing to do, he created opportunity for them such that they can be busy and they can drink at the right time after the work.
And because of the interest of time, let's look at the president's demeanor. I mean, looking at when he took over power, remember the era of the late President Moi, every news article in media houses had to start with what the president has been doing the whole day, where you heard the president has been doing ABCD. But when he took power, he kind of took a back seat when it comes to media. He was kind of media shy. He was soft-spoken, but his actions and his work, he let his work speak for himself, something that we don't see in a lot of leaders, and especially now that we are headed to the 2022 succession politics. We don't see that in a lot of leaders. When a leader does something, he wants everybody, the media, to be there. But the late President Kibaki took a back seat and just decided, let my work speak for itself.
Indeed, that's true. I remember that during the period of Daniel Teacher of Moi, we could read every news, could start about where, if it is Sunday, where he went to church, what he said in church, when he was fellowshipping in a certain church, we could hear whatever he does. Whether small, whatever he does, it must come to the media. And what you are saying is true, because when the President Mwai Kibaki took over, as we expected to hear of Daniel Teacher Moi every news, every day about Daniel Teacher Moi, we found this now in a different way, such that now we could hear Moi Kibaki maybe once in a month, and this were causing a problem to most of us who are not used to that. Yeah. Of course, there was a lot of change in his leadership as compared to the previous regime. So Moi Kibaki came with a very new style of leadership that have made even the current president is now copying him, because he was a good leader. He's a rather role model, and I think even the next president will also try to copy the Moi Kibaki era, or rather Moi Kibaki leadership, because he did things very differently, and they were unique, and they appeared good. He is a very good leader who knew how to arrange and concentrate on what he wants us to focus. When he said, I want to let this be done, he could concentrate on that, and nothing could move him. Already have made a decision. So he's a president who was not doing things as a show-off, but he wanted to ensure that he transformed our country, which he did it successfully.
Yes, and as we wind up, your final comments when it comes to the late president. A lot has been said. He was development conscious. He did this, he did that. He had been hailed for doing a lot for Kenya, transforming the Kenyan economy to a point to hit 6% in his first term. And his image to the international world was quite warm and welcoming. Your final sentiments when it comes to the late president?
What is very important that we have learned from Mwai Kibaki, one, from the angle of being somebody who is not selfish. And I think that what Kenyans, all of us, from our leaders to the common wananchi, that we should copy the Mwai Kibaki about his character. He was not a selfish person. He was a person who was ready to share whatever he had. He was a person who was ready to work for us. And remember, when he was negotiating to become a president, he intended only to run for five years, so that people can see exactly what he does. And when he did that, we saw that he had really lost an opportunity. So entirely we can see that the president was somebody who was doing things for the sake of the country, for the sake of the interest of common wananchi. And that is what we should copy, all of us as leaders and common wananchi, to ensure that we work selfless. We are not able to do things just for our self-gain, but to ensure that the interest of these countries is catered for. Remember when he did Nusu Mkate, it shows that he was ready to share. Remember when he appointed the cabinet secretaries. They are not like the previous regime. President Moi could appoint even 35 ministers. But when Mwai Kibaki came in office, he only selected about 15, and they could do more than the 35 ministers. So he is a person that we should copy, we should run his history, copy him, and do as per him, because he is really a role model. He is a real model to every one of us. And I think that as we continue to wait for his burial, let's continue to also pray for the family, for the whole Kenyans. We continue working together and copy his leadership. I will insist that let's copy his leadership because that's what is going to transform our nation.
Well said, and thank you so much, Abraham Maina, who is a youth leader and also a political and governance expert there, putting things into perspective, and especially when it comes to matters youth, that the late President Mwai Kibaki had youths at heart. Thank you so much for your insight and indeed for coming. That's where we put a cap on KBC Lunchtime News and the analysis here, but we will be crossing over to Parliament. For those who haven't had an opportunity to bid farewell or even have the last view of the late president, you can have that chance right now at Parliament buildings. Closes at 5 p.m. So you have about 2.5 hours. My name is Njue. Lensa Odingo has been our sign language interpreter for this duration and for also the analysis. Thank you so much, Lensa, as well, and everyone who has made this broadcast a success. And until next time, do have yourself a blessed afternoon.
Republic of Kenya. So, in the exceptional motion which will be moved by the leader of the majority party in the National Assembly this afternoon, the tributes of this House will be recorded in special honor of the late retired President's long and uninterrupted service in this House, his selfless service to the Republic,